If you've not yet been using reverb throws, then you are missing out big time. Reverb throws are a really great way to add a moment of drama, momentarily change the overall characteristic of a sound, or just simply fill empty space. But what is a reverb throw? How do we use it? And what are some situations that would be appropriate to use a reverb throw? I'm going to cover all of this in this video. Let's just start off by talking about what a reverb throw actually is. Fundamentally, a reverb throw is just a reverb that you turn on for a moment. Let's just take a listen to this simple clap, and I'm going to show you a really nice, clean, easy to understand example of a reverb throw. Here's the clap we're going to be using. The first thing we need for a reverb throw is a reverb. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Ableton's hybrid reverb and throw that on the track. There's a lot of different ways you can set this up, but my preferred method is to turn the dry wet all the way to 100%. And then I select the reverb's header and I press Command G. That's going to group this into an audio effect rack. Once we've done that, we can right click and choose Create Chain. Now this chain is going to be our dry pass through and the reverb is going to be our throw. I'll tweak this reverb a little bit. I'll put the blend to 100% algorithmic reverb, and then I'm going to turn the decay up really, really far. This is way further than I normally would. But like I said, this is a momentary effect, and I'm only going to be turning it on just for a little bit. So I want there to be a lot of reverb sound building up so that when I do turn it on, I get a nice lush effect. Once we've done this, we have our basic reverb throw in place. All you have to do now is automate this number. This is the gain for the chain that the reverb is sitting on. Sometimes I find this easier to right click and map to macro 1, and that way I have a nice macro to control this with. By default, I'm going to keep this down, so we still get just the dry sound. But what I'm going to do now is press A to enter automation mode and automate this reverb up until we get to about 0. Now we're going to hear this reverb swell up a little bit behind the clap. I can always make a little curve to this automation, do whatever I want to get it to have the kind of contour I want. In context, that's going to provide a lot of nice snappiness and motion. Let's just take a listen. We can hear that little reverb throw whip up right at the end. I'm going to make it a bit more obvious this time. Pretty cool. There's a few other things you can do that I like to add to my reverb throw to help shape the tone. Usually I like to put an EQ in front of it and just cut out some of the lows of the incoming signal. And then I'll add another EQ after that and attenuate some of the lows as well. I'm just going to use a shelf for this one with a pretty low Q. Really, this is entirely to taste, and all you're trying to do with this is to get the right timbre of reverb that works for you. Something else I like to do is add an OTT after this. This OTT is going to really pull out a lot of weird characteristics of the sound and also make the reverb last a very long time. This can be pretty extreme, so dial it in however much you want. But now with this added processing, our reverb throw sounds like this. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of a sweep up into this clap as well. Maybe make it a little faster by curving the automation. Just to give it like a swoop up into that clap. That can help a clap or snare feel more energetic. In some ways, it really just kind of feels like you're coloring in the reverb by playing around with it like this. Anyway, that's how to build a basic reverb throw. When I search my library, you can see that I've actually gone through here and I've made a ton of different reverb throws, all with different characteristics, different colors, different reverb types. So sometimes I'll just go through this list and chuck one in and see if it works. I recommend you go ahead and build a whole bunch yourself. So now that we have our reverb throw created, let's talk about the 7 reasons why you might want to use a reverb throw. The first reason is to add a sense of drama to a particular moment in the song, whether that's a certain lyric in the vocals or maybe it's a part of the synth. Adding a reverb throw is going to emphasize that point and make it just seem larger than life. Let's check out the vocals I've gotten here and play around with some reverb throws on these. All right, so I've got this little turnaround vocal sitting right here.
Don't call my gaff, but it won't
Now, I've already got a sound in here that is sort of taking up some room. What I'd like to do is remove that particular sound to open up a bit more room. This already has kind of a hazy, reverby, space-filling sort of sound to it. Let's get rid of it. I don't want to clutter things up for our demonstration purposes. Now, we should have a little more room at the end of this phrase where I'd like to add a reverb throw in instead of that little sound effect I had.
Don't call my gaff with a ball pipe.
Here we go. I'm going to add hybrid reverb and set my rack up like I did before. Let's go pretty basic with it this time. I'm not going to add any extra effects just for the time being. And I'm just going to automate this parameter directly. So if I show the automation, I'm going to first of all try to bring it from -infinity, totally silent, all the way up to 0 at the end, and then cut it off like that.
Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe.
This is all well and good. It doesn't really have a very distinct vocal characteristic though. So I'm going to try and dial this in a little bit to make it feel a little more like the vocals being emphasized, and I'm not just adding in a blast of white noise underneath the vocals.
Phones don't call. Phones don't call. Phones don't call my. Phones don't call my. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff. Phones don't call my gaff with. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my.
I've gone in here, I've shortened the decay, increased the size, increased the damping, decreased the bass malt, turned up the stereo, and done a little bit of EQ work on this. Now I feel like it's got a bit more of a vocal characteristic. Let's see how it emphasizes these vocals.
Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe.
I don't have to fade into it either. I could just have it fairly abruptly turn on right about there.
Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe.
Maybe just on the last couple of words.
Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe. Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe.
I don't have to have it abruptly cut off either. I could go ahead and fade this out a little ways.
Phones don't call my gaff with a ball pipe.
Let's try and grab this vocal, have it start nice and reverbed, and then slowly dry out.
With a ball pipe. With a ball pipe. With a ball pipe.
I'll turn that same little sound effect off as well as the fill so we get a better idea of what we're hearing here.
With a ball pipe.
That throw emphasizes those first couple words and makes them feel a little bit bigger and as though they're in some sort of a different room than the more dry vocals that follow. And that brings us to the second reason why you might want to use a reverb throw, and that is to make a sound feel more expansive, larger, or further away. Let's check out the top basses in the second drop here. They're fairly dry and consistent all the way throughout, but if I were to add a reverb throw to this, then that would make them feel as though they're getting larger as it grows. I'm just going to grab my standard reverb throw, which is an Ableton reverb, some high passing, a little bit of low passing, and a bit of shelf, and I've got an OTT after it with the time turned way down. Here, all I have to do is automate the chain volume to make the reverb more audible. I might actually increase the stereo on this and decrease some of the highs as well, and increase the size to make it a bit larger and thicker sounding. Yeah, I like that. Let's see how it sounds in context. It's like the bass all of a sudden grows and starts to come in on the sides a little bit, whereas the original's a little more centered. So it's making this bass feel much larger and more expansive. We can also use it to make the bass feel a little bit further away. It's going to be a different type of reverb we want to use for this. So I'll go ahead and build something like that on the variation I have on this bass in the next phrase. We'll start with our standard reverb throw, and I'm going to darken this up quite a bit. We can already hear with a darker input filter, it's already going to feel as though it's going off into the distance. Once again, I think more stereo, larger size. That's really going to make it feel as though it's disappearing off into the distance. I might also take down the highs on the OTT a little bit as well. What I want to do here is actually use the reverb to trade off with the dry sound a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and right click the dry chain, map that to the chain volume as well. Open up my mapping settings, and I will set the second one, which is called chain. I should rename this dry to make it easier to tell what's going on. I'm going to invert these settings a little bit. I'll say at the highest setting, it's at 0. And then as I increase this, it will decrease the dry volume. Let's try minus 20 decibels with that. And I will go ahead and automate this chain volume. And the nice thing about this is I can cut it right on the next one and get that effect all over again. Or I can cut it right on one. Very apparent on this one, it feels almost as if the sound kind of like sighs and falls away a little bit. Having the ability to cut a reverb so abruptly and dramatically brings me to the third reason why you'd want to use a reverb throw, and that is to play with space. By doing this, I'm creating this sense of impossibility in my music. There's no way in the real world reverb actually acts like this. It does not just abruptly cut off. It always tails away. But in the DAW, we can really play around with this. We can absolutely dive in here and say, no, I want this reverb to just be boom, out, all of a sudden. Using this one as an example again. If I didn't have the ability to cut this reverb out like that, it would totally cover up that cool laser sound we have right at the beginning of this measure. And it would obscure and blur the beginning of the next note too. I could probably do with a little less of this. I'm being pretty over the top here just for the example. I'll do it opposite on this one where it feels like it's coming from the distance and getting closer to you. So now the reverb's just going to basically start. It's going to pop on almost instantly, which again, reverb does not do in the natural world. Because we have this OTT on here, it's a very, very long 14-second reverb. It is still going to be hanging out from the first notes that happened. This is giving us a really cool effect of these basses kind of weaving in and out of focus within the song. This is just really opening up a whole new world of cool sounds and techniques to you. Then you might want to go over and check out EDMProd's free download section. There's a lot of free resources there, including this like 50+ page PDF that'll bring you all the way through how to make electronic music from start to finish. Moving on to the fourth reason why you should use reverb throws, you can use them to create suspense, tension, and also to facilitate transitions. Now, inevitably, we have touched on this little bits here and there, particularly when talking about the claps, when I was using the reverb throw as a bit of a swoop up into the next clap. But let's talk more about the creating suspense and tension aspect of this. I'll stick with these basses here, and instead of turning them on and then off again right when the bass is done, I'm instead gonna have it off for the entirety of these basses, and then slowly add it in here to act as like a gradual growing transition, creating tension and leading us into the next bass. You hear in the background? It was the tonality of that bass slowly creeping in until the next one happened. I'll try and make it way more obvious this time. I think an appropriate spot to cut it would be right on the snare that happens in the middle of this bar. I'm going to copy this reverb over here into a transition effect that leads into the bridge of the song. It sounds like this. Now, I'm already using a reverb throw on this. It's kind of a modified version of a reverb throw rack I like to use a lot, which is called the far away rack. What this one's doing right here is as I turn the knob up, it's actually cutting a lot of the highs, increasing decay time and reverb amount, which is giving the overall impression that something is moving further away from you. Because I'm talking about suspense right now, though, I'm going to turn this one off And I want to use the other reverb throw we put together as the example. So sometimes what's really cool to do is to add a little bit of this reverb in and just keep it in there and playing for a really long time to create this bed of tense sound underneath everything else. In this situation, I probably want more of a high sound. I don't want too much of the lows muddying the mix up. And I can get really weird with this. Why not? Let's just throw a phaser in here. That way, there's always a little movement happening. And I will also turn the decay time up all the way, just so I have a nice long bed of sound to work with. And of course, we can add some EQ afterwards, just to make sure it's nice and clean and exactly what we want to have coming through.
Effortless levels, tip of the metal, I leave them disheveled and wet. Effortless levels, tip of the metal, I leave them disheveled and wet. Effortless levels, tip of the metal, I leave them disheveled and wet. Effortless levels, tip of the metal, I leave them disheveled and wet. Effortless levels, tip.
There we go. Now that's a really nice way to kind of keep this tension underneath everything. When I turned it off, it felt like the track needed a little something more. So I might actually explore doing something like this in another iteration of this track at some point. If I take this same technique and go even further with it, that brings me to the fifth reason why I like to use reverb throws, and that would be to create texture. I've already started doing a little bit of it here with this phaser flanger, but I can go even further with this. Go ahead and grab a notch filter and increase the LFO amount on it. And also turn the spin up a little bit so it's got this kind of stereo feel to it. I'll throw an erosion in here as well. Not thinking too hard about where these are going right now. I'm just giving it a shot. What else can we do? Maybe amp it? That's pretty cool. We can also add some redux as well. And now, instead of creating a just constant sustain with this, I'm going to make it pump a little bit. So I'll come in here and I'll just turn the chain volume up every quarter note. So now we're turning a reverb throw into like a pumping, downsampled, noisy textural bit. The sixth reason to use a reverb throw is honestly one of the most common reasons why you might want to use that, and that is to just simply fill empty space. Let's take a listen to the first drop here. What I've got going on here is a pretty spacious bass with just a few wubs. Now, the way that I'm currently filling space is with the use of delays. But what if I wasn't using delays? I'm going to go ahead and turn this chain off entirely. That's where that little echo is coming from. And this is what we get. It definitely feels like it needs something. Let's go ahead and check out some of these throws. Here's one that I called Blue. Not really sure what it sounds like, but usually what I'll do is I'll just take a listen and turn the chain up. Ooh, that's like a nice dark one. How about Breathy? Yeah, that's got a bright quality to it. I like that. Clouds. I like this one. Let's go ahead and give this a shot. So I have wub, wub, and I might want to just kind of increase the reverb after this until the snare happens to kind of fill the back end of this beat up a bit. Alternately, I could use it to fill this whole region up until the next wub comes in. And it might be cool to just kind of repeat that over and over again. So we get this swelling sound each time. And on the last one, yeah, I'll leave it like that for now. Maybe right here, I'll make a pretty extremely loud one and then pull it down again as it attacks. But remember, we're filling space here. Let's not get distracted. I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot over here and see if this fills a little more room. Ooh, I really like that. I think that sounds awesome the way it swells up like that. I feel like that might be the move for how to use it in this particular scenario. Yeah, so now this whole section, which started out like this, a bit dry, a little bit boring, kind of empty, now sounds more like this. Some of the ways that I'm using this almost feels like it's a call and response with the basses, which actually brings me to my seventh and final way that you can use reverb throws, and that is as a response to a sound of some sort. Let's keep going forward with this particular example because I feel like it's working really well. But I'm going to make it a little more call and responsey than it currently is. What if I just add the reverb like this afterwards? Let's see what that sounds like. And we'll do one here as well. So this is filling in space and creating a call and response. Pretty nice. Now, because I didn't write this track with this particular reverb throw in, there's already a lot of areas I've filled in. I'm going to turn some of those things off. Let's see what it sounds like now. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Honestly, I think it could actually tail a bit longer into the next sound, like that. There we go. Let's see how that goes. Lovely. That's a pretty cool call and response. And because we're just controlling volume of reverb here, we can get all kinds of rhythms going too. I'm going to highlight this region and just see what it sounds like if I add a couple sine waves in here. I like that a lot. It's just a little too loud. We're going to pull that down, copy it over each time. And then this last time, I'm going to go ahead and make them triplets. Check it out. We now have some call and response with the reverb throw. Hopefully these little creative, weird uses of reverb throws inspire you to start making more use of them in your track. They can really just have a huge range of reasons why you might want to use them. Anywhere from creative sound design to simple spatialization, all the way to drawing attention to just a word or two. Incredibly useful. So with that knowledge, just go forth and throw your reverbs everywhere.